Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. We are doing the second part of how to plan the right PR and marketing tactics and activities for your business. Last week, we did a real deep dive into the demographics and how they all interact with the different media outlets. And this week, we're going to do a deep dive. I wanted to do all of them, but it's too difficult. So we're going to focus on probably the top 3 that most food and drink businesses use a lot, which was starting with social media, a little bit of email marketing, and PR. I can't do everything about PR in this session because, as you can imagine, it's huge, but we will continue to develop that as time goes by. So in this workshop, we will cover how to be more strategic about your social media, email marketing, what should go in your newsletter, and public relations, what you can do today and how to put together a press release. So I always start with, who am I? Who am I? This is me, AJ. I spend my days consulting, training, mentoring business owners with their food and drink PR and marketing. I get weirdly excited about strategy, and I make sure that everyone's always pointing all our work in the right direction for success. Those of you who've been on all these workshops know that I change this photo every week. You can see here my husband in his military uniform. He's now a reservist. He used to be in the full-time regulars, and we lived in all sorts of places. But this was us on Remembrance Day this year. There's a small selection of brands I've worked on over the past 2 decades, a very small selection. I thought it'd be really cute to find a product shot of every brand I've ever launched and put it on a page. And I got sort of a quarter of the way through and went, oh my goodness, it's going to take me far too long. Anyway, you get the gist. I spent the first part of my career working in food and drink PR in London. I worked my way up to be an account director at just 26, managing multi-million-pound budgets. But I've always been passionate about good food and drink, and I wanted to help more business owners. So I left London, I moved to Kent, and I set up Sharp Relations in 2010. Last week, I shared a hilarious early promo photo, which was taken for the Times. This week's is worse. How bad is that? Here's a screen grab from a video I did for the Times in my first year. I mean, I looked literally terrified, and I'm quite shiny. I was interviewed for about 25 minutes about the way that small businesses can generate PR at home on a budget. There are so many smaller food and drinks brands that need marketing and PR support. And the London PR agencies, they're out of reach for most of these companies. This is our team today. There's 9 of us, and we're very passionate about great tasting, sustainable food and drinks brands. We've won lots of awards, and this is us picking up our last award, which was in December 2021, last month. Our results drive incredible growth and awareness for the brands we work with by influencing consumer behavior through media coverage, which, it drives traffic to websites, it boosts visibility, it engenders trust, it drives footfall, and it builds your brand recognition and awareness. Before I dive on, I wanted to share with you an idea we had about putting something back, and we wanted to help more people and make our services available for more ambitious brands. So we're doing a special offer whereby if you sign up for a 12-month PR or social media plan by midnight on the 31st, we give you 20% off for the whole year. Anyone can do the social media plan, but you'll know you're ready for PR if you have stockists or listings or really good website that you can sell through, samples and a way of sending them out fast and efficiently, a growth mindset, you're ready to jump on the opportunities, and you don't have to start straight away. So you can take advantage of this offer. But you do need to start it within 3 months. Anyway, book a call with me. I think Isabella's got a link to do that. She can pop in the chat. So just book in a call. We can make a plan, and our prices start from as little as £100 a month for some of our training courses. You can scale it up depending on what you need for your business or brand. I always start with this one. In previous sessions, we've covered how to deliver a killer strategic marketing plan and all the elements that go into that. So it's very complex, but we've got the training session. If you want it, give me or Isabella a nudge and we can send you the recording, later today. But we talked about the most important thing, which is no one knows how good your products or services are until after the sale has occurred. Before customers buy, they only know how good your marketing is. So put simply, the business with the best marketing wins every time. Just to recap, last week, we talked a big in-depth dive about the demographics and the target markets. Again, we have a recording of this. So if you want it, give me or Isabella in the chat a nudge and we can send it over. That's absolutely fine. You can see here the silent generation. These guys are 76 or over. Known as, they've got a subsection known as the war babies. They were raised by Victorians. They like TV, radio, newspapers, the kind of traditional outlets. Then we've got baby boomers. These guys have got large disposable income. They've got lots of time. And they grew up in an analog era, but they have really embraced technology. They're loving Facebook and WhatsApp, and they're the fastest growing demographic on Instagram. Your Gen Xs, age 41 to 56, they straddle the digital world. They do use it, but they tend to listen and watch rather than post. They have high brand loyalty and they've got good spending power. Then you've got your millennials. They're aged from 25 to 40, first generation to be digital natives. They're very self-sufficient, very, very motivated by social causes and corporate responsibility, very eco-aware. They're well educated, but it has come with debt, which has influenced their buying habits. They love online shopping and convenience. They're very swayed by deals and special offers. And a large percentage have families. They're genuinely omni-channel. They will purchase across any of the different platforms that are available. Gen Z, this group never known life without technology. They're very caring. They'll choose an independent store over a chain store. They place high importance on brand ethics and corporate responsibility, more so than millennials. Gen Z is probably the most gender non-specific and the most likely to shop via social media. And then you've got Gen Alpha, which is 8 and below, which they're really too young to be considered for marketing. So these are the three elements, media outlets, that we are going to really deep dive into today. I mean, there are so many different things you can do, and we will continue to build these out in subsequent workshops. I was just saying before we started today, Isabella and I planned out the next 10 or something. So keep talking to us, keep telling us. At the end of these sessions, there's a survey. Give us feedback. Tell us what you want to hear, because we're loving doing these. So tell us what you want to know, and we'll share it with you. Social media, should you care about it? Yes. Absolutely. 78% of the UK population is on social media. It can be extremely cost effective if you do it yourself. And it's crucial you have a proper strategy, which is what we're going to talk about today. Next is newsletters, email marketing. Nothing is more important than your route to market. It's all very well having a lot of followers on social media platforms, but you know, we talked about Facebook last year. It fell into a black hole, didn't it, for about 24 hours. How then do you communicate with your audience? You know, 10,000 followers on Facebook, you still have to adhere to their algorithms. You still have to listen to the way in which they want you to post, their guidelines, whereas having your own email list gives you a lot more flexibility. And it is still one of the primary ways of driving sales in most businesses. Public relations, of course, in my opinion, this is one of the most critical outlets, I would say that. But what is PR? PR is the focus of generating a favorable public image of your brand. It's earned, sometimes hard-earned, highly trusted. It includes press coverage. It includes media relations, influencer relations, social media. And it's, you know, it's very, very influential. It's probably the most effective in terms of changing somebody's behavior. But it does take time. So how to plan the right PR and marketing tactics and activities. So social media, let's get strategic. I want to take you back to the marketing plan that we did 2 sessions ago, where we really thought about the goal of where it was we were hoping to arrive at the end. So we talked about your commercial objectives. Maybe it was to increase your revenue. Maybe it was to move into a new market. Whatever it was, we talked about that goal, that strategy. Now, there's no reason why your social media shouldn't have a strategy, but it might not be the same. It might not be so closely linked to your commercial objective, but it's no less important. There's lots of people who say to me, you know, clients we have who say, I know it's really important, so I'm doing it, but I'm not always sure why or what effect it has. And that just tells me there isn't a strategy behind it. You're not sure of your end goal. And there are so many different end goals you could have. I mean, brand building is an obvious one, but what does that even mean? Really talented people to come and work at the agency. Could be sharing your values. So maybe your target is millennials and Gen Z, and you want to talk about your corporate responsibility. You want to talk about your values, your ethics as a brand, and really kind of engage them that way. It could just be a fan page. It could be a place where all your fans come on and they talk about how brilliant your brand is, which would then link beautifully with brand discovery and brand building. So you can see how these are slightly overlapping. It could be for feedback. I know lots of people who use it for feedback. They use it to inform their customer service kind of training going forwards. And one of the major things that people don't often think about is market research. I mean, you have got a platform here of people who are talking to you about your brand range, which is fascinating. We work with a brand called Oggs, and I remember them putting up about launching their aquafaba, which was for baking purposes. And so many people said, can it scramble? Can it scramble? Can it scramble? And then this became their MPD, this idea of, right, this is what we need to do next. absolutely fascinating. And there's so many different things like that, which you can use your market research. What's everyone saying to you? What are they talking about on there? Do they get what you're talking about? We talk about this a lot when we do the next session, which is all about measuring the effectiveness. But look at the comments. What are people saying? How are they interacting with you? And lots of people say to me, you can't have Instagram if you're B2B. Well, we're B2B, aren't we? We only help businesses who then help consumers and also businesses. And I just wanted to challenge that. I think nearly every platform now, including TikTok, including Instagram, including all the things which traditionally everyone would say, well, that's only consumer. It's not really, because everyone is on these, and every consumer is probably also a trade person as well, or at certain age ranges they will be. So we absolutely use Instagram as a B2B company, and most of the people who follow us are very much businesses. And the main function for me, as I said, it's recruitment. We get a lot of people asking to work with us through our Instagram channel. And the second is potential clients. They like to check us out. They like to have a little look. And often when we're onboarding a new client, they say, oh, yes, I saw that on Instagram when I'm talking about something, which is, so we know they're watching, even if they're not interacting with the content, which is really interesting. So we make sure we put on our successes when we've got our brands on TV or radio or that kind of thing. But the third thing we found is that we've really built up a community on our Instagram, which is lovely. We have a community of different supporting businesses, professionals, writers, who we interact a lot with in our content. We interact with them. And that is a really lovely way of growing your following and growing that engagement. It's kind of picking 10 or 15 different brands or businesses or friends and making sure that you show up and you support them every time they post. You give it a little comment, you give it a like, they will start doing it back to you. You'll all get your engagement up together, which is where you want to be. The goal with content on Instagram, but not just Instagram. I'm now talking about Instagram, I'm talking about LinkedIn, I'm talking about Twitter, I'm talking about Facebook, I'm talking about TikTok, whatever platforms are your platforms. It's all about planning. If you want to show decent content, you've got to plan, you've got to schedule regularly. I always say the minimum, when you're doing it yourself, the minimum is at least 3 a week, 3 scheduled posts a week. And then you've got space for the odd spontaneous post when you can. So then, you're getting a lot of content then coming. You can use apps. I mean, you'll know Hootsuite. One of the best ones, though, is actually Facebook's own, which is called Creator Studio, which, you know how your Facebook and your Instagram is linked. The hub for that is in Facebook. And if you go onto your business page, you can find either Publishing Tools or Creator Studio, and you can actually publish across both platforms using that. You can't filter things though, and you have to resize things ready for Instagram. But anyway, it is a very good scheduling tool and it's free. Your post should fit in with the following plan, really. So there's affinity. I call it affinity. This is the peek behind the curtain. This is the why somebody likes you, why you're going to have this relationship with your brand. It's the peek behind the curtain. It's the somebody's got a birthday today. It's the real relationship. You're sharing your brand values here. You're talking about your team. You're talking about something funny that happened today. It's quite light-hearted, but it is the things that people interact with a lot. Authority, that's the second section. Very, very important. This is where you showcase your expertise. This might be a video of something that you make. It might be you showing your expertise about the harvest or talking about some major factor which is affecting the industry at the moment. It could be an award or a testimonial, or it's something that says you're good at what you do. This is giving you authority. And 3 is awareness. This is sales. This is making sure people are actually aware of what it is you do. You can do this as subtly or as unsubtly as you like. There are many different ways of being salesy without sort of making it too obvious. You can do it in a secondary way. For example, if you wanted to make people aware that you're now available to food service, for example, and you weren't before, you might just talk about the fact that you have already linked up with somebody in food service. And that would then allow your followers to realize that is something that they could do. I know that sounds very subtle, but in a way it works quite well, especially on something like Instagram. It's okay to post the same content to Facebook. Often what we try to do is we try to do it at a slightly different times, just so it's not the same content on both platforms. But generally, you haven't got the same people looking at the same platforms at the same time. On Instagram, your content lasts a little bit longer. So it lasts probably between 6 to 8 hours before it's really just gone so low down that people aren't going to refresh enough to see it. Whereas Facebook, it's quite quick. It only really lasts 1 to 3 hours. So it's worth thinking about when you're thinking about what you're sharing on the different platforms. Don't forget to interact. The appeal of social media is that it brings people closer to your brand. So try and make time to reply to stories, to messages, to comments, any relevant content. Customers often tag you in posts and stories that they're doing. So just try and react, send them a heart. It's how you build your community. It's how you get your engagement up. The higher your engagement, the more people see you on these social media channels, the more people you're going to reach. Facebook. So Facebook is great for promoting things like web links. You can promote things, events, tickets. It's really good for local knowledge. It's really good for recommendations. I always say, like, try and get into groups, especially if you are a local brand, try and join some of the groups. And obviously you mustn't go in there and sell hard, but you can go in there and interact gently. It's used very widely, but it's probably the most used platform, but mostly by the older generations as a rule. Facebook do's and don't use hashtags on Facebook. They don't work in the same way as they do on Instagram. Do include a link back to your website, and do use more space to explain your concept, because you've got this time. The other thing on Facebook is that if you it always used to be a landscape photo was the only thing you could put up. Now you can put up a portrait photo. And the reason you might do that is all down to real estate, I suppose. If you've got a portrait photo, it takes up far more of somebody's screen than if you have a landscape photo. So actually portrait's really great on there. Instagram. Okay, so Instagram is a image-led platform. That is the most important thing to remember about Instagram. The algorithm, I'm just going to start with this. The algorithm punishes, that sounds terrifying, doesn't it? The algorithm does not enjoy words on posts. It's not what it's there for. So if you put words, you have words writing across your post, it will literally be shown to fewer people. Now, there is a reason every now and then that you might want to do that, and it might be for your grid. You might have a separate strategy. But just know that as soon as you've put words on your post, it's going to be seen by far fewer people. So generally keep it to photographs as much as possible. Don't be tempted to stick your logo on it. Lots of people do that. You don't need to. It's already in the top corner. Don't be tempted to write on lots of posts and things. It pushes things down. That was the thing with the logo. Make your profile picture your logo, and then it will always be next to every post that you have. And you don't then need to add your logo then to a post as well. But if you are going to use words on a post, just try and keep it as small as possible. No more than 5 words, that sort of thing. Links, you can't share links on Instagram, but you can put them in your bio. So you see the top bit here on OGS, they've actually just used their own bio because they are linking to a specific recipe that they've got something going on with at the moment. But what I use is a website called Linktree. It's free. If you go on Linktree, you can then link to 2 or 3 different websites. So they just click on there and it'll be, come to my website, see the article I wrote, anything else that you're talking about on your Instagram. And that's really common. Lots of people do that. Stories are so important for building a following. Stories and reels really for that matter, but stories are really, really important. It's a great way to share something fun. It won't be permanently on your grid, but you can then keep them in your highlights afterwards if you want to. They're great for showing what you're up to today or showing behind the scenes. They have become imperative to the success of a page on Instagram. So the more you use them, the better the visibility of your profile, of your page, and it keeps your logo right in front of your followers because it's always then there, isn't it, at the top of their screen when they log onto the app. Yes, anyone that mentions you, share to stories, highlights. Do your best post of the day, share that. You don't even need to think about that then, do you? You can literally you've already done a post, just share it to your stories. Reels, we know that Reels are one of the most fast growing areas of social media at the moment. Reels are just huge and the algorithm is favoring Reels so highly. So if you can use Reels as much as possible, it's brilliant. The best thing to do is to use music that's already trending in the background. If you go onto Reels, if you record a video, that's the easiest way to do this, is to record a video that you want to share. When you go onto Reels, you can then press audio and it will give you the most commonly used audios going at the moment. And then you can move the little slug along, which represents your video, so that you line up the music with exactly where you want it to be on your video. And you can keep previewing it and coming back, previewing and coming back. It is a huge area. The other thing you can do is when you're watching other people's reels is in the bottom right hand corner, you can click on the audio and you can save the audio, and then you can use it then on your own reels later. Saving things as highlights. Highlights, you can see here kind of where to buy, stockist reviews, news flash here on the OGS one. It's really, really useful for, the only way you can save things to your highlights, they have to have been in your stories first or your reels first. And that's how you kind of link them across. Think about your key messages, think about your USPs, think about what's important to you. So for example, this is a brand selling cakes. So stockists, really, really high up there. Reviews, really, really high. News flash is any PR that we've generated for them. They share that kind of thing in there, which is great. And then photography is just beautiful pictures of their brand, which people can kind of go in and interact with and share and stuff, which is really, really brilliant. Hashtags on Instagram are absolutely key. Two things that help you to be discovered by people who aren't already following you are hashtags. You can have a maximum of 30. Definitely use 10 at least. The easiest way to do this is to actually write your hashtags in advance. So say there are 10 hashtags that you could use every single week, week in, week out, which relate to your brand. For example, if you're a farm in Kent, it would be farms, Kent, Southeast, agriculture, fruit grower, whatever those things are. But you would make sure that you are using those 10 every week, week in, week out. The following 10 could be related directly to the photograph, whatever it is that you're showing that week, you know, frosty morning, apple orchard, whatever it might be. And then you can have rush tags at the end, which again are hashtags which you have to use, which if you're just in a hurry and you need to kind of click and link them, generally they are related to the kind of people you're trying to attract into your business. So what are they going to look for? Are they going to be looking for healthy snacks for kids, or are they going to be looking for things to do with the kids? Or do you know what I mean? So you're really thinking about the target market. What are they clicking on to bring them into your website, into your profile? I could go on about Instagram for ages, but I won't, don't worry. So LinkedIn is so key. I had to put LinkedIn here because lots of people go, LinkedIn, isn't that for recruitment? Not anymore, no. I mean, LinkedIn 5 years ago was massively a recruitment site. In the last 2 years, I think I read somewhere it had a 1,500% uptake in people worldwide. I mean, it was just insane. It really blew up over lockdown because it was a way of interacting. It was a way of networking with different people. When there wasn't any networking opportunities, it was happening through LinkedIn. And it was huge, absolutely huge. It's calmed down again a little bit now, but it is still absolutely huge. It's so important. If you are communicating as a business with other businesses at any point, then you need to be on LinkedIn. You need to be there. You need to be sharing articles, sharing any PR you've generated, talking about industry issues. On here, your posts, unlike Instagram, which was 6 to 8 hours, and Facebook, which is 1 to 3, posts here last for 90 days. So you actually really only need to post once a quarter. I recommend you try and do it at least once a month. I mean, that's very doable. I try and do it once a week. I don't always manage to do that, but I try to. Make sure your profile's up to date. Make sure that you have set it up so that you are attracting the sort of people that you want to attract. And you can call them out. You can actually say in your kind of profile bit, in the about us bit, you can say, we're looking to work with ambitious, great tasting brands. You can literally call out the kind of people that you want to work with. I'm looking for a new compostable packaging company. And you will find that you start attracting all these kind of people, which is really, really, really useful. So just some content ideas. We thought this would be really useful for people because they often say, I just get stuck with content. There's just so many ways you can do it. If you go back to your affinity awareness authority, I was talking about a few slides ago, affinity, it could be meet the team. So you could go through every member of your team. That's a post each. You could do one a week. A day in the life. Again, you could do something really similar where you follow somebody around and you do a story, or they take a story of their day. You know, maybe it's on the tractor, maybe it's picking, maybe it's having a meeting, maybe it's, and then finishing up, putting up your feet in front of a fire or something. People's birthdays, that's always a lovely one. Anyone who's affiliated with your company loves it when you share somebody's birthday and they all kind of comment on it, if that's appropriate for your business. Cheers to the weekend. UGC, we talked about this lightly last session, user-generated content. This is where you incentivize different people to actually share content about your brand. So if you're a pub, we talked about being in a pub, didn't we? About how you could win something if you shared your moments in the pub, that sort of thing. It could be share your best recipes that you've made with this product that you've now bought from the supermarket, share them with us, with the tag us in to win, I don't know, month supply, lifetime supply, whatever you want to do. Then you've got awareness. So this could be a recipe, it could be product of the week, product of the month. It depends. If you've got, you know, I don't know if Ruby's on here from Curd and Cure. She's got huge amount of different products that she's working with. I mean, products of the week, products of the day. We're just working with these new brands. It's a no-brainer, really. Spotlighting posts. You could spotlight your producers. That's a really nice way of doing it. Or suppliers, different producers and suppliers that you're working with. Stockists, you could spotlight them. You know, we're proud to be working with such and such, or our fruit comes from such and such, that kind of thing. Works really well. And then authority. This is, you know, we talked a little bit about using awards or testimonials or maybe videos of you kind of just sharing your knowledge. But there's a lot of the like, did you know, or historical snippets, that kind of thing that you can do on there. And then I've just put a list of National Awareness Days. You guys know how to find these. There's actually a lady who has a website called Charlotte's Lively Kitchen, something like that. And she's brilliant. Every year she updates this list and she puts out the dates for every single of the big National Awareness Days. And it's really useful. We use it a lot for things. But yeah, you know, Apple Day, Curry Week, Brunch Week, there is something for everything. I can assure you, whatever it is you make, there will be probably 5 really bang on appropriate National Awareness Days. And even the other ones, you can still interact, can't you? You can still talk about them. You can still find a way to segue your own brand in. It just helps with coming up with an idea when you're not feeling inspired. So email marketing. There's a lot going on for email marketing. I mean, the thing I like about it the best is you own it. You own the channel. You own the information. You're not worrying about algorithm changes. You're not worrying about all those kind of elements that you have to worry about with something like social media. You're not worrying about having to convince somebody else, which is what we're having to do with PR. So your email can be very effective, depending on what your strategy is, of course, and why you're sending the email. Are you sending the email to drive sales? Are you sending it because there's a discount? Is there an awareness? Is there a new product? Are you just keeping your customers engaged, keeping them warmed up? Are you increasing the kind of loyalty and lifetime value for your customers? It depends what you make and who it's for. But I think one of the really crucial things, and I think I talk about it in a minute, is about being very aware that your trade, you know, most food businesses have got a very clear trade side to them and a very clear consumer side. And in many ways, those 2 different areas are so different on their strategy for email marketing. You should be, you know, both lists should be very much separated. Let's talk about how to build your list in the first place. Now, building out your list is probably the hardest part, isn't it? But don't be tempted to try and beat the system. Don't ever buy a media list, GDPR and all that sort of thing. It's just not worth it. And also it's just pointless because this list will not be relevant. It won't be people that are interested in your brand. It's sort of vanity rather than sanity, if that makes sense. How can you do it? So every time you're at events, whatever those events might be, from farmers markets to big exhibitions to export shows, make sure you have some way of capturing interested people. A lot of the big exhibitions, they do actually have a scanning system where you can collect people's emails if they let you. That's very good. It's very useful. It's one of the best ways often. There are other incentives. You can offer to give something away. You can give a discount code, can't you? You see it a lot, don't you? If something pops up on the website, 10% off if you sign up for our website, our newsletter list. You could give away an ebook or a white paper or some other kind of downloadable asset. There's lots of things, you know, free coloring books if your product's marketed to children, that kind of thing, which would be really good. You can also run competitions, lots of different ways you can run competitions. You can run them through reader offers, through different magazines. You can do it with social media. There's so many ways you can run competitions. I could probably run an entire session on how to do competitions. There's quizzes as well. That's another way of doing it. You can have a quiz on your website, and quiz on the website, and to get the answer, you have to put in your email address. It was really annoying, isn't it, when that happens? But it is a way of capturing people. Other ways are, some people have like calculators and other things that you interact with, and then to get the results, you have to put in your email address. Webinars work really well. It's one of the ways I build my list is through webinars and talking to people and getting people interested. And also you can have things kind of set up within your blogs and within your newsletters saying, are you interested in this? Do you want to hear more? And, you click to download something, and you can offer your email address in exchange. Messaging, knowing your audience is super critical when you're writing your email, your newsletters. This is where, I was talking about the kind of the consumer versus trade segmentation and how important that is. But just making sure you're crafting a really compelling email newsletter. It's really important that you hyper target this copy. Exactly what we were talking about 2 weeks ago, about actually your copy should be very, very specific. You should be calling out your perfect target person. You should be using their jargon, their emojis, their way of speaking. It's very, very important. Getting the preview text right is really important as well, because that denotes whether someone's actually going to open it or not. So the subject line is very important. It helps readers decide whether or not they're going to open the email. So use keywords, make it benefit driven. So what's in it for them? Use an active voice. And if you can, personalize it. That's always really, really important. Yeah, so the preview text appears immediately below the subject. You normally get about, I think it's like 120, 140 characters, but that's your elevator pitch. That's why someone's going to open your email. So do spend a bit of time on that. People often just kind of skip over that bit, but it's actually really, really important part of your email newsletters. Make it easy to read. People are really busy. We don't write in great, long, beautiful sentences, which is how I love to write. When you're writing SEO kind of content, something that's going to be scanned on screen, it's got to be scannable. So you've got to keep your sentences short. I mean, I spoke to one of the best copywriters. He did a seminar a couple of weeks back, and his joking advice was write as if you're writing to a 5-year-old, in that you're making this as easy and as scannable as possible. Don't use great big flowery words. Don't ever use double negative. Like, keep it really, really, really clear. Short sentences, short paragraphs, avoid complicated words, avoid jargon. Using bullet points is very effective. And you're selling benefits, not features, a lot of the time. So you're focusing on the benefits of what your product is offering at that time. Use a clean design. Don't be too tempted to have a black background because it looks really funky. It just makes it really hard to read for a lot of people. When you've got your list and you're starting to build it, you do need to keep it warm. You can't just keep it and then not use it for 3 months. You've got to keep, even if it's just once a month, sending something interesting, sending something useful, however sporadic. It could result in subscribers forgetting who you are and kind of lead to low conversion rates. If some of your subscribers go cold, you can always run a re-engagement plan. But do practice good email hygiene. Do make sure you are cleaning out inactive subscribers and email addresses that are no longer in use, because it does affect your sender reputation. And measure it because you can. So why wouldn't you? So measure how effective it is. Look back, have a look at what you've been doing and see which emails did better than others and why they did. Look at what time you sent them. Just measure it, analyze it. And always tell stories if you can, because story is a really powerful way to grab attention and get your message across. Okay, PR. So, right, I've got a whiz now. Right, PR. There's so many things you can do to increase your success of landing your story in the media. Before you start, there's a lot of considerations about your story. So the big one is it new? Is it a story? I think that's really, 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 really key, because so often what we think as brands is a story, because it's so huge for us, isn't really necessarily a story in the national press. And it's being very clear what is a story and what is not a story. I often think there's a bit of a litmus test. Is it exciting enough that you would go home and go out to the pub and tell your friends in the pub? Would they be interested? More than just, would the guy next to your friends in the pub be interested? If so, then we're talking about a story. This is something that has wide appeal. So if the answer is yes, then great. If you're not sure, keep interrogating your story and make sure that you're finding the right angle. And the ways in which you can do that are vast. You can look at what's going on in the press. You can see if there are links and ties. Can you add extra layers to what's already being talked about in the press? That's called newsjacking. There's so many different ways to do that. When you're putting together a press release, there are some things you really must include. You must include a title. It's really, really key information. It needs to grab attention, but it needs to be explanatory, and just try not to use something that's like a kind of slightly random pun, which doesn't really mean anything. It's much better that your title explains what it is. You're not trying to write the article for them. You're trying to excite them about a story that is of interest. Subtitles can be great for drawing out a little bit more details and key elements that you think really will grab the attention of the writers. And don't forget, your editor's notes at the bottom is there for you to add additional information that doesn't necessarily fit in the press release. So your first paragraph is really important once you've nailed the title and the subheading. So this is the who, where, what, why, when, sometimes how. Who, the company. Where, it might be a supermarket, a restaurant, our line of work, could be anything. What, the story. So in this case, on my example, Pete's Pickle is the company, is launching the world's most expensive pickle, chutney, which is that's the story. Where, in Harrods. Why, after discovering a very unique and now totally top secret ingredient. Oh, I've forgotten the when. And I should have put in this weekend or today or this month. That's really, really key. All of those pieces of information must go into first paragraph. Then you've got the second paragraph. Now, this is where you make it relevant. You contextualize the story. So you're substantiating any claims here. You are giving more facts about the story. You're maybe using supporting information here. You are explaining the hook if it wasn't already explained well enough in the first few sections. Usually still a lot of external information here. So this is where you can use your insights. This is where you can use your research. There's so much information that can go into this bit. And then the third paragraph is where we kind of link it back to the business and show why it's so relevant, why that business is industry leading, doing something that nobody else has thought of. Why is that so relevant? Why is that a story and not just a piece of fluff and marketing? And that's where we kind of draw it all together. So those three paragraphs are without doubt the most important paragraphs in your press release until the quote. You love a quote. Quotes are brilliant for PR because the quote has to be quoted verbatim. Of course, it's a quote. You have an opportunity here to add in some key messages or USPs about your brand within the quote, which is also relevant to the story that's being told, which makes complete sense. It is an opportunity to, it's uneditable and it's part of the press release. So it's got to work with the story. It's got to be interesting, but you can also get a key message in there. Quote marks sit around, I mean, I'm sure everyone already knows this, quote marks sit around a quote, but if a quote goes on to 2 paragraphs, you don't close it off at the end of each paragraph, you just close it off at the end of the quote. Editor's notes, that's where you can add additional information. For example, it might be for OGS, we always say OGS is in all capitals. They don't always do it because they have their own style guides at each individual outlet, but we always ask. Or something like Fallon Brewing, Fallon is pronounced Fallon, even though it's written Fallon. Your content in your press release, so what you leave out is as important as what you put in. Retailers don't want products which are available in the on-trade, vice versa. Consumer magazines want supermarkets mentioned or big online retailers. So you've got to be, and glossies like future launches, they don't want a launch that's happening today. Their lead time is 6 months into the future. So it's really being very aware of who you're talking to and what it is that they want to see. So we would write a very different press release for the long leads as we would for mid leads, which are like supplements and weekly magazines, that kind of thing. And then again, it would be different again for short leads, for kind of websites and newspapers, share that content a few days later. I would focus on who the press release is being written for and adapt your style accordingly. So for consumer magazine, you're kind of speaking directly to the consumer. For a national, you're definitely speaking to the journalist, and you keep it very factual, and you've definitely make sure that you fact check everything that's in there. Trade publication, you're really talking to the reader. So for example, if you're writing to the grocer, you're talking about somebody who is a buyer probably for a multiple supermarket. So you're talking about how how it looks on a shelf. You're talking about how it would work on a gondola end. You're talking about in-store promotions. You're talking about that kind of thing. Top 3 things to watch out for, common mistakes in press releases. Companies are always it, never they. It's one of the things that will identify your press release immediately as not being written by a professional agency. It's very, very easy to say Sharp Relations are, because I know that's a whole team of people, but it never is. Sharp Relations is. It always is. A team is always singular. A company is always singular. A group is always singular. A collection is singular. A library is singular. So you've got to just go through and make sure you've changed your haves to hases, your theys to its, all the way through. And a company is a thing. It cannot think or want or need. So just be careful before you attribute emotions to a singular entity. Again, it's one of those things where it's a group of people and collectively that's what you know it as, but it's just one of the things that will flag up that the press release hasn't been written by an agency. So just be aware of that. And the other one's how to write numbers. Numbers generally, stylistically, and again, all publications have their own style guides, but generally numbers 0 to 9 are written out, 0, 1, ONE, and then 10 plus, they're in numerical form. I always say something about grammar, spellings, punctuation. If in doubt, look it up. Even today, I've been doing this nearly 20 years. In our office, we still have conversations, I would say, definitely weekly, probably daily, where somebody is checking something. If in doubt, look it up, because you're writing to professional writers. So you've got to get it right. It's really, really important. Outreaching to the media, do's and don'ts. So tailor your pitches. Don't ever send one press release to like hundreds of people. It will never work. It will never, ever work. Pick off your key titles, research the journalist you're talking to, make sure that press release is tailored to that journalist. I know it takes longer, but trust me, it's 100% worth it. Keep it brief. Make your media pitches short, to the point. These journalists are getting hundreds of emails all the time. They don't have time to read them all properly. So if you haven't grabbed them in the first sentence or two, probably it's going to get deleted. Do always include your availability and price in your pitch. This is information that they absolutely need. You've got to tailor your pitches. You've got to keep them brief. You've got to provide the name of a spokesperson. If it's the kind of thing where there's a quote in there, they're probably going to want an interview. Make sure you've said up front, whoever it is, that the spokesperson is available towards the back end of this week, should you want an interview. Stuff like that's really, really useful for a journalist. If they respond, make sure you reply in a timely manner, because they are always on deadlines. Keep the writer in the loop of what you're doing. Even if your reply is, let me check, I'll come back to you. Even if it's that, they would rather know and be kept in the loop than not. So just do what you say you're going to do. Let them know if there's a problem or a delay. Be really clear about samples, that kind of thing. Just let them know if you can only deliver samples on a Wednesday because that's when your driver's free. Just tell them, that's fine. As long as they know, then generally you don't have any problems. Images. Yep, I'm really near the end now. Okay, so images are really, really important. So for print publications, images, they've got to be high res. So that's at least 1 megabyte, 300 DPI. They've got to be sharp and clean. Need to be in focus, clean background, not too much fussiness. Do think about your backgrounds. I remember a beautiful set of photography coming through with a plastic carrier bag in the background. Colourful, bright, generally. Look at the magazine or look at the newspaper you're wanting to appear in and see what kind of photography they use, because if you can emulate that, your chances of getting in much higher. What does it say on the tin? I mean, just make sure that the product can be clearly seen, and the label, other important information. You haven't got reflection or glare, that kind of thing. And would you stop to look at it? Would it, think about the composition of the image. Are you telling the story? Would you stop and look at it? I think that's really key. And also a note about copyright, really important to know that whoever takes the photo actually owns the photo. So if you're using a photographer, make sure you've agreed up front that you are buying with their time, you are buying the copyright to those photos and the right to then use them. Yeah, this is just a little bit about the types of images. So when we start working with a client and we're doing PR, there are generally 3 types of images that we need from all of our clients. The first is a headshot. Generally, especially if we're going to do anything trade, we need a headshot of the kind of key spokesperson. We need cutouts of the product. That's really key, because for a lot of magazines, you can see here in this example, it's cutout imagery with text that's been kind of fitted around it. And then lifestyle imagery, again, is really, really key. It's so many magazines don't actually want product shots because it looks like an advertorial, but they might include a shot like that. And you get a credit along the bottom just saying the shot has been shared by, and you can have your brand name in there. And then you normally get your brand mentioned in the copy as well. So that's the way in which you make sure that you've been represented well. But yeah, lifestyle illustrates products in situ. It's very useful for kind of telling, it's that storytelling part, isn't it? It's where it's being used.